Hello, everybody. This is Mr. Cole. As always, please go ahead and take notes as you follow along and watch the video. And then for those of you that are struggling to open up the Google Doc or can't turn it in, at the end of the video there will be the list of questions that you need to answer. So you'll just be able to pause it and answer it from there. So go ahead and take notes and then work on the questions afterwards. So today we're going to talk about William Howard Taft and the election of 1912. All right, so we've learned last week about Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican who was much more progressive and instituted the square deal, a deal which busted up the trusts, focused on the health and the environment, and then was just generally a reform type president. Well, after 2 terms, he decides not to run in 1908. He was a very popular president. But there was a standard set by George Washington that a president would only run 2 terms. So he decides to step away from the presidency. And he encourages William Howard Taft, who was also a Republican and was his Secretary of War, to run. And William Howard Taft, running off Roosevelt's popularity, wins the election in 1909. Now, William Howard Taft was from my hometown of Cincinnati. Unfortunately, not really known for doing a whole lot as president. He was a very cautious progressive. He ended up, like Roosevelt, broke up 90 trusts, but did not really advance the progressive cause at all. He really just kind of followed in Teddy's footsteps, didn't really change a whole lot of things, and there's a lot of fighting within the Republican Party. You'll see a picture there of William Howard Taft. He was a big guy, and he famously was, famous story, who knows if it's true or not, got stuck in the White House bathtub. And so he bought a bathtub that could fit 4 guys. That's sadly kind of what he's known for as president. Now, because Taft was not exactly huge on the progressive side, he gets caught between the progressives and the old guard Republicans. These are Republicans who weren't as aggressive with the progressive movement and weren't as reform oriented. So he's kind of stuck in the middle of these people who want to really take the reform and run with it, and people want to just stick with how the Republican Party was. So since he's caught in this middle and there's all this arguing and bickering happening, in 1912, Teddy Roosevelt decides to run for a 3rd term. This is an unprecedented move in our country's history. Normally, once you've been president and stop being president, you don't try and run again. So Teddy Roosevelt tries this. Now, the majority of people had voted for Teddy Roosevelt. But the way the nomination system worked, the old guard Republicans gave the nomination to William Howard Taft. So all these progressive Republicans are very upset because, hey, we all voted for Teddy Roosevelt. And so they decide to form their own party with Teddy Roosevelt as their candidate. So the Republican Party splits into the Republicans and the Bull Moose Party. The Bull Moose Party became the nickname for the Progressive Party, which was led by Teddy Roosevelt. He was famous as saying that he was as strong as a bull moose, and so the party became known as the Bull Moose Party. Some of their big beliefs, like other progressives, they wanted to push initiative, referendum, and recall, which gave local voters the ability to put issues on the ballot, as well as remove politicians who were corrupt by vote. They also pushed for women's suffrage, the 8-hour workday, minimum wage, and the thing called the Federal Trade Commission, which we'll get to that later. But really, these modern ideas about women being able to vote and only working 8 hours a day and having a minimum wage, these things weren't in place yet, and the progressives really pushed that. You'll see here an image of Teddy Roosevelt literally riding a moose. Just thought that was kind of a cool picture. So, all right. Now, lastly, since these 2 parties split, so the Republican Party splits into 2. So what we have is we have really 4 major candidates running. We have, for the Democrats, Woodrow Wilson. Okay, Woodrow Wilson was from the South, but he did endorse progressive reforms. So he's a Democrat, but he's a more progressive Democrat. You have William Howard Taft. He represented the old guard Republicans, kind of the old school Republican ideas. Teddy Roosevelt, he was all in on the progressive movement. And again, the Bull Moose Party had split from the Republicans. And then lastly, we actually have a socialist candidate. This is Eugene V. Debs. He believed in trying to end capitalism and the system of the economy that we had. Debs never really has a shot to win, but he's still a pretty famous guy. Now, since the Republicans had broken up into two, they split all of their votes between Roosevelt and Taft. So they never really had a shot of winning in 1912. So Woodrow Wilson wins easily. All right. On Tuesday, we're going to talk about the Electoral College and how that works with our election. But Woodrow Wilson only wins 42% of the vote, but ends up winning the election by a landslide because Republicans split their votes off into two. So here's a picture of Woodrow Wilson. He is our final progressive president, and we will learn more about him later in the week. But that's the end of Taft and the end of Teddy Roosevelt. They kind of messed themselves up by not being able to agree and by splitting up. And so here are some questions we have. All right, number one, who followed Roosevelt as president? Number two, describe what happened with the Republican Party in 1912. Number three, what were the beliefs of the Bull Moose Party? And number four, explain how Woodrow Wilson won the election of 1912. So make sure that you get those answered. Okay, I'd prefer if you did it on the Google Doc, but if you can't get that to work, go ahead and just copy it down loosely for me. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a nice day.